Welcome back, Power 9 fam. I know it's been a minute, but we wanted to try and bring back our Fireside Chat series with a little bit of a twist. This time, instead of answering some of the questions that you guys sent in, we were going to take some time and talk about some specific topics. To lead things off, for the first in this, what might end up being a series, I want to talk to you guys about Bandai. We as a store, we love Bandai. If you guys aren't familiar with them and what they offer, I mean, I'm sure that you're familiar with Bandai in terms of what kind of media they produce, what kind of video games, but for how we interface with them as a store has to do with all of their card games, their TCGs. If you haven't heard of One Piece and Digimon and Dragon Ball, and they're coming up with Union Arena, which is basically just a collection of all your favorite anime, I'm not sure what country you've been living in, but they're kind of everywhere. They're definitely taking off. And unfortunately, what we've been seeing, especially this year, is that they're victims of their own success. And I kind of want to talk to you guys a little bit about what that means and how it affects us and how it affects you. So, to recap, Bandai, as they relate to this industry, the industry that we're in, they make card games. They make some pretty good ones. They definitely have some very, very popular IPs. And that's part of the problem. When Bandai had to deal with just Dragon Ball and then Digimon, there weren't too many bumps. There were some hiccups here and there, but it wasn't that big of an issue. And then last year, actually about 2022, so technically 2 years ago, they came out with One Piece. Smash success. Have no complaints about the game itself. People love it, they rave about it. I'm sure that if you don't play it yourself, you have friends who have played it, or at least you know people who do. Here's how allocations should work in this industry. And if you're unfamiliar with the term allocations, we as retailers, we send in our want numbers, which is how much product we want, to a distributor. That distributor then communicates with the manufacturer. The manufacturer then tells them, hey, this is how much you're making, this is how much you have to spread around. And then the distributor tells us how much product we have. That is what is called an allocation. To give you guys a general idea of the time frame we're working on, with Bandai TCGs, we submit our want numbers about 8 or 9 months before the product comes out. We receive our final allocation 2 months prior to release. So there's a 6 to 7 month lag time between when we send in what numbers we want and when we hear back about what our final allocations are. Historically, we can take those allocations to the bank. That's why we have the pre-order system the way that we do, and that is how we are able to solicit our early bird specials and things like that. However, what has happened recently, really in 2024, we started to see a little bit of it in 2023, is that even after we receive our final allocations, those numbers are still getting slashed. They're getting hammered. And while we're definitely trying to play catch up and make the best of the situation that we can, it caught us with our pants down the first couple times. And we've been trying to figure out a solution here, trying to figure out what we can do to solve the problem. And the short version is one of the things that we're going to attempt is we're just going to have fewer pre-orders going forward. We're going to not have as many pre-order opportunities. We're going to just deal with the numbers as best we can. Once we have the final numbers, which won't be tied to the allocation, it'll basically be like once the shipment is on its way and coming in, that is what we have to operate with, which gives us a much, much tighter window. So why is this happening? That's really what I've been trying to solve, what I've been trying to figure out. And unfortunately, there are a lot of factors that are outside of our control. The primary one, and this is something I've heard from a number of people, is that, as I mentioned, back when Bandai only had to worry about Digimon and Dragon Ball, things were fine. Now they've added One Piece, which is probably one of the most popular TCGs in the world right now. They've expanded Dragon Ball to now include Dragon Ball Fusion World. And what they haven't done is they haven't increased their production capability. So for example, if you have 4 printers, these are just totally made up numbers. If you have 4 printers and you have 2 games, roughly you can allocate 2 of those printers to one of those games, and you're golden. Now you've added a 3rd game in One Piece and you still have only 4 printers. And by the way, these printers are running 24/7. If they break down, if there's damage, if there's a problem, they literally work on the printer as it's running. There is 0 downtime. So now we've added One Piece. And One Piece has been a smash hit. I think it's exceeded everyone's expectations. We had a feeling it was going to be big. We didn't know it was going to be this big. I don't know that Bandai did either. So now we have Dragon Ball, Digimon, One Piece. We still have 4 printers. Now we're adding on Fusion World. Now we're adding on Union Arena. By the way, we're about in that window, that 8 to 9 month window before Union Arena comes out. We're going to be sending in our want numbers. So now we have 5 titles, 6 titles technically, and still 4 printers. I'm pretty good at math, but even if you're not, even if math wasn't your best subject in school, I think you can see how this might become a problem. And yeah, I'm being glib about it, but the situation is going to get worse before it gets better. So that's issue number 1 with Bandai. Now let's talk about issue number 2. Our preference as a store is communication and consistency. We find that makes our lives easier when we can set expectations and meet those expectations. And we found that, like, as players, and not just, I'm not speaking to just you guys, we got into this because we play games. And we found that we liked not necessarily a routine formulaic experience every time. Variety is the spice of life. We like things to change up a little bit. But what we don't appreciate, and we have to imagine that you guys don't either, is when things change wildly from release to release. I'm going to again use One Piece as an example. For OPO 2, 3, 4, 6, and 7, we have what were called pre-release sealed events. For OPO 5, Bandai threw that out the window. If you were to ask me why, I have no earthly reason. In what way did they throw it out the window? Instead of having 64-man sealed events where we have tons of product to spread around to as many people as we want, realistically 64 2 events, it's hard to hit that cap. Bandai said for this particular product, which I mentioned as OPO 5, we're only going to give you 16-man events. Our community is a little bigger than that. We also found this out in not quite the 11th hour, but we found this out about 2 months before we were supposed to host these events. That's not a lot of time for us to communicate, educate, plan, and prepare. It was pretty rough. And what we're finding is time and again, whether it's events, whether it's when you can pick up your product, Bandai kind of changes things on the fly, and we're on the back foot. I mentioned product. Sometimes you can pick up your product during pre-release. Sometimes you can't. We find out that information typically the week of pre-release, which makes it really, really hard for us to tell you guys, hey, you can come and get all your pre-orders on this date. So we've been erring on the side of caution and telling you a later date, because what we don't want to do is we don't want to overpromise and underdeliver. That's the worst thing that we can do. So we're trying to hedge our bets. I don't have an explanation as to why this is the case. There's no printer, there's no supply chain problem I can point to. This just is what it is. And if you guys have any ideas, I would love to hear them. So what's the solution? What can we do about this problem that we find ourselves in? Because it's not just us and it's not just you guys. We're in this kind of together. Honestly, make videos like this. Talk to you guys about it. All we can offer is transparency, and that's what we're going to continue trying to do. Raise awareness, let you guys know that, hey, I'm also not saying that Bandai are just the culprits here. I'm sure there is something going on that is preventing them from increasing their infrastructure. That is, I don't think that anybody is sitting in their boardroom going, you know what I'd love to do this time? I want to mess with our player base some more because we hate consistency and money too. Nobody's thinking that. I hope nobody's thinking that. I seriously doubt anybody's thinking that. Bandai routinely solicits their game stores by sending out surveys, sending out question and answer forms, and we do our best to fill those out and get back to them. But that feedback, maybe it's being heard, but I don't think there's any action being taken on it. So we're aware that Bandai has been going out to more of these conventions. They've had more FaceTime. They have more of an appearance, more of a presence. And if you have the opportunity to talk to anyone, let them know, hey, we love your games. But what's going on? Tell them that you weren't able to pick up your decks on time. Tell them that you had to get your product in waves. Because we're finding this out often after you guys do. There's not a real direct line of communication from Bandai to us. We communicate with Bandai through these surveys, as I mentioned, but we find out things through social media the same time you guys do. And candidly, that sucks. When I have customers come in, when I have my friends come in, they're like, hey, we're really excited for XYZ. I don't like saying, I don't know. I don't have an answer. It's kind of a unique circumstance, and I'm sure that it will get better, but we're going to do everything we can in the interim to make sure that we have done everything that we could have possibly done to set ourselves up for success and to give you guys the best time possible. That's it for today. Thanks for tuning in. If you have any questions, please post them below. Hit that like or subscribe button. And until next time, stay safe, and we'll see you at the tables.